Very simple discussion here today. Which teams in the NFL should be in on trading for Brandon Aiyuk? The 49ers star met with the team yesterday. It feels like the two sides are pretty far apart on a new contract. They just took another wide receiver, Ricky Pearsall, in the first round. They have Deebo Samuel, they have George Kittle, they have Christian McCaffrey. If the 49ers are willing to move on from Brandon Aiyuk, trade him elsewhere, there should be a long list of teams looking to add him to the mix. We're going to talk about that here today, which teams I think it makes the most sense for to pursue a Brandon Aiyuk trade. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing here. Helps me out a ton. So, to me, it's going to have to be a team likely in the AFC. If it's a team in the NFC, it's got to be probably outside of the division. You're not going to be trading him within your own division. And it's probably got to be a team the 49ers don't feel super threatened by. So not a big-time playoff contender. Not a contender for the Super Bowl, right? I think the Lions should absolutely be interested in him. They have the cap space. They could really use a Brandon Aiyuk type skill set. But why on earth would the San Francisco 49ers engage in such a big trade with the Detroit Lions after what happened last year and how the Lions are trending, right? I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. Looking at the AFC, though, there are a lot of teams that could potentially make sense for a Brandon Aiyuk trade. I think the Steelers, they're always in win now mode. They have the cap space to sign him to a mega deal, and I think that any team that trades for him should be in good faith ready to sign him to a big deal. Absolutely, I believe that. I think Brandon Aiyuk deserves that. He's a top 10 receiver in this league. Great route runner, great length, very explosive. Just such a dynamic football player. The Steelers, they have a need at receiver, and, pairing him up with George Pickens, Roman Wilson, Russell Wilson throwing the ball around there a little bit, I think it can make a lot of sense. I think it would be a potentially dynamic offense in Pittsburgh. And you pair that with their, glow up on the offensive line, the defense that they have, you could be cooking in Pittsburgh there if Brandon Aiyuk landed in Pittsburgh. I think the Commanders and Patriots, yes, both of these teams have made some investments at wide receiver, but they both have rookie quarterbacks. The reason I'm not including Caleb Williams and the Bears here is for obvious reasons, right? They have a ton of wide receiver talent. Just drafted your guy Rome Odunze in the first round. You acquired Keenan Allen. You have DJ Moore. So they're not in the conversation. But when you're trying to kickstart a young quarterback's career, Jaden Daniels for the Commanders, Drake May for the Patriots, both of these teams have cap space. They both have the young quarterback. Why not go get them a top 10 receiver to really get their career started on a good note? I think you do have question marks with both teams on the offensive line. I think that the Commanders obviously have Terry McLaurin. They have Jahan Dotson. I really like that top two pairing for them. And I like the receivers the Patriots added in the draft this year. But for me, Aiyuk would be the best player, skill position player on either of those two teams. And he has the connection with Jaden Daniels from playing at Arizona State. But I think the Patriots make a little bit more sense roster-wise. But I could see both of those teams being interested. Honestly, my Jaguars make a ton of sense. You have flexibility after 2024 with the Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram contracts. You could even potentially use them as trade chips. I know a lot of Jaguars fans won't want to hear that. You love Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. Gabe Davis, there's a team out after the 2025 season. Why wouldn't you want to give Trevor Lawrence, who you just signed to a massive deal, a bona fide stud at receiver to pair up with Brian Thomas Jr. for the next 5 years? I mean, that makes too much sense. It really does, in my opinion. The Chargers, I think that they make a lot of sense as well as potential suitors for Brandon Aiyuk. You're going to want to get competitive quick once again. You have Justin Herbert in place. You have Jim Harbaugh. The offensive line infrastructure is as good as it's been during their time there, during Justin Herbert's time there. Jim Harbaugh is going to bring a physical run-first approach, but Brandon Aiyuk gives Justin Herbert the weapon that he no longer has. Yes, you added Ladd McConkey. Yes, you have Quentin Johnston, who had a disappointing rookie year. Maybe he can take a step forward. But you lost Keenan Allen. You lost Mike Williams. Keenan Allen on the older side. I understand why you don't want to keep him around and pay him long term. Mike Williams, he's been injured a lot. So there's reasons beyond just saving cap for moving on from a Keenan Allen and a Mike Williams. The Chargers now have a healthy cap situation. Why not give Justin Herbert a big-time receiver to get this Jim Harbaugh era rolling in the right direction? I think it makes a ton of sense. The Jets are an all-in team. They're the team that went and acquired Mike Williams. They have Garrett Wilson. They have Breece Hall. They have Aaron Rodgers. Why not go all in? And this is also a team that has a very healthy future cap situation. Why not go all in for 2024 and sign Brandon Aiyuk so you have a damn good receiver for the next few years? Who knows how long the Aaron Rodgers era will last in New York, but you're going all in on 2024. Aiyuk helps you in that regard, and he helps you long term. You have a healthy cap situation. I could understand the idea of, well, if we bring him in and we pay him, what are we going to do about Garrett Wilson, who's going to be up for a new contract soon? Pay them both. Why not? But I could understand the argument against that. But again, the Jets are all in. It's win or go home in 2024, I think, for that regime in New York. I could see the Broncos having interest. They have flexibility at the position. Courtland Sutton, they can get out of that contract whenever they want to. They could get out of it right now if they wanted to trade for Brandon Aiyuk. He would certainly add a lot of talent to that offense. A team that went and drafted Bo Nix in the first round, Sean Payton in year 2. They have a pretty good infrastructure offensive line-wise. You added Troy Franklin. I think that adding Brandon Aiyuk to, again, help a young quarterback get going makes sense. I would like it for the Ravens a lot, but they are cap-strapped. If they wanted to pursue a Brandon Aiyuk, they would certainly have to pivot from a big-time player or two in 2025. They would have to pivot from one of their team leaders, one of their best players, at least one of them, in 2025 if they wanted to bring Brandon Aiyuk on long-term. I don't think it would be a bad idea necessarily, because I think Brandon Aiyuk would be, maybe the best receiver that Lamar Jackson's ever played with. But again, that would be a pivot type of move. It would be a pivot type of move for the Jaguars. I think that there's more flexibility with that football team, though, and it makes more sense. But the Ravens, I think they should be interested. I think they should be interested in maybe pivoting long-term to acquire Brandon Aiyuk. I think the Bills, another team that would require a pivot, but they could use a bona fide star at wide receiver after losing Stephon Diggs. Do they want to shell out that type of cash for another wide receiver and use that cap space for another receiver after moving on from Stephon Diggs, after having to cut so many of their key veterans this past offseason? I think they've done a good job rebuilding it around Josh Allen, but could he use a Brandon Aiyuk? Absolutely. And I think that they have the flexibility to be able to do that long-term as well. So there are a lot of teams in the AFC that make sense. I obviously think the Lions should have interest, but I don't know why the 49ers would do that. I don't think that they should trade him within their division either. Could the Packers pivot? They have a lot of really quality young receivers. But again, if you're the 49ers, you're probably not trying to engage in business with the Packers right now. That's a team that gave you all you could handle in the playoffs, just like the Lions. So I'm looking at a lot of AFC teams. I think that this is going to be a fascinating storyline to watch. Will he stay in San Francisco? Will they get a new deal done? Will they trade him? If so, where's it going to be? Would love to know what y'all think. Let me know who you think makes the most sense for a Brandon Aiyuk trade in the comment section below. Really appreciate you tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing. Really helps me out. Y'all have a good one.